This video demonstrates how to use the live refill options available in the grab-and-go market. The live refill feature allows you to pre-kit your markers using an iPad. This allows you to skip the process of having to print your pick slips, send them to the warehouse, and have them returned to have inventory corrections done. Everything is done real time, instantly, and that's why we call it the live refill. If you're familiar with a product called Lightspeed, it's similar to the functionality offered by Lightspeed. Everything that happens in live refill is real time, which means the inventory data is up to the second as of when you start the live inventory refill process. As you may know, all inventory functions in the grab-and-go market are handled by planograms. Nothing will appear in live refill unless it is also planogrammed. So we're going to take a look at this test location, and we're going to do some tests to show you and demonstrate how live refill works. We've got a planogram here called test with an item here called test. When you go to the iPad, the first thing you do is you select the location that you want to do live refilling for. I'm going to select the test location. The next thing you do is you touch the live refill button. It displays the location. You've got your planograms, you've got test and automatically added items. Notice we can change between. And if you go over here, you'll see that you have the test item here. Notice that the max is 0 and the minimum is 0. And the inventory for this item is also 0. With a min and max of 0, this particular item is calling for 0 inventory to be filled. This is correct behavior. And this is what you would want to do if you wanted to discontinue an item at a market. Let's say that test item isn't selling very well and you no longer want to refill it. All you would do is you would set your mins and your maxes to 0, and it would never call for any product to be pulled. Now let's change some values. Let's make our minimum 6 and our maximum 12. One thing is that if you need to refresh the data, you click done and then click on live refill again, and it will pull refreshed information. Now you can see that the minimum is 6 and the maximum is 12. Over here to the left, you see the amount of inventory that is expected to be pulled, which is 12. This makes sense because on the shelf you have 0, and see over here you have 0, and it's calling for 12 items to be filled. You have 3 basic options at this point. You can touch 0, which would indicate that you're not going to fill this item at all. You can touch 12, which means that you're going to fill the maximum suggested refill of 12. You can move the slider in case you're filling for an amount between 0 and 12. For example, let's say that for some reason you don't want to refill all 12, you want to put in 6. You would just move the slider over to 6. Most of the time we expect that you're going to fill to the max. If you make a mistake, as you noticed, you can click the redo button. You can touch the 12 button to indicate that you're refilling 12. And finally, you can touch the case button. Now in the grab-and-go market system, it is assumed that for items that you want to fill by case, your max is the case count. So let's say this was a Mars product. Let's find a candy bar. Snickers. All right, Hershey's Sweet and Salty Bar. We'll go with that one. Let's say that the Hershey's Sweet and Salty Bar comes in a box of 48. What you're going to do is you're going to set your max to the item count in that box. In this particular example, it would be 48. And what's going to happen, actually let me put some inventory. So when I touch the plus sign right here, it increases the inventory for the shelf. So if you look at the data, it says there's 3 on the shelf, the minimum is 48, the minimum is 4, and the maximum is 48. What you can do is you can touch the case button, which will add 48 items onto the market. So now if we go over here and we refresh our inventory data, we're going to see that the on-the-shelf inventory is actually 51. What it's doing here is it's taking the on-the-shelf inventory, which was 3, it's adding it to the max, the case count, which is 48. And this is done in situations where you don't want to break up a box or you don't want to send out partial boxes or partial cases for whatever reason. Notice that the inventory is reflected instantly once we make a change. So for example, when I touch 12, it immediately reflects that 12 units have been put on the market. So now test item has an inventory of 12. It assumes that once you touch 12, this is inventory that is, for all intents and purposes, guaranteed to go to the market. It's being physically pulled off of the product line, and it's going into a box. Now, if for some reason you were to do an inventory between the time that the inventory is picked and the time that it's refilled, for example, if you have a separate person who does inventories and they go to the market before the route driver refills it, obviously the on-the-shelf inventory would be wrong. So if you are going to have people do inventories who are not the route drivers, definitely make sure that they don't do inventories between that small window when the inventory has been pulled from the warehouse but hasn't yet been put into the market. In general, we recommend that route drivers do inventories after they complete their refilling at the market. If you want to remove an item, let's say that you just want to completely get rid of test item, you can just click on the little X right here, and that deletes it from the planogram. Now when we go back to live refill, that item is completely gone. You'll also notice that there's nothing here. There's nothing being displayed. And the reason for that is that the items that do not need to be refilled are not displayed. So if the person who's pulling the inventory for this market comes here and they don't see anything listed, they know that there's nothing for this market that needs to be pulled. One thing I'd also like to address is automatically added items. Automatically added items is something that you're going to want to look for in your planograms from time to time. In an ideal world, items are never added automatically. But in practice, every once in a while, items get put into a market that aren't supposed to be there. And what happens is that when a consumer makes a purchase, instead of the iPad telling the user that the item is not available, it allows them to buy the item. Presumably, if an item gets put into the market, you'd rather have it sell than sit there and not sell. And what happens in this instance is that the item is going to be placed into an automatically added items category in your planograms. So you can go through and you can see items that were sold at the market but not necessarily are supposed to be there, and then you can decide what you're going to do. Are you going to delete it? Are you going to send someone out to have it pulled? Or are you going to add it onto an actual store fixture? But this is one way that you can detect whether there's foreign product in a market or not. And we can take a look at a different location. Let's use CVS. And we click on Live Refill. And I can see on this particular market, there's a lot of items that have been added automatically. So this is the sort of thing that we need to go through and clean up. Looking at this particular market, I can see that it's probably going to get serviced pretty soon. It looks like it's pretty empty, or it might not even be live because I see a lot of zero inventory. So this might not be a good one to use. Pretty sure TransFirst is live. And this is the basic process that's repeated for all items. So looking at this particular market, we look at the AMP strawberry limeade. The on the shelf is 1, the minimum is 3, and the maximum is 6. So it's calling for 5. And once again, if you have 5 strawberry limeade that you're going to put in, you would just touch the 5. If you put 0, you would just touch 0. If you were going to put in a full case, which in this case, a case would be defined as 6, you could touch case, or you could use the slider to indicate an amount between 0 and 5. When you're done with the location, you click on Done. And that takes you back to this screen where you can select another location and continue with the live pre-kitting.